This story was shared by u/onyx_ox, so credits to him. I think my mom was cursed by a Wendigo. Every family member of mine, including myself, has had an encounter with the paranormal or supernatural at one point in their lives. From the little people that kept my great-aunt company as she lay dying in a hospital bed to myself making successful contact with something through a Ouija board. But this I don't have an explanation for. Even as someone who believes in these things, I always try to ration the mundane over the magical. However, after delving into learning more about a certain mythological cryptid, I can only come to one conclusion surrounding my mother's passing in the spring of this year. I used to live in the mountains in Northern California with my mom, who was a single mother, and the place we stayed at was a house that was owned by my aunt. It was a historical house with well over 200 years of history on the property, and being rebuilt and altered through the decades. This house was situated in the thick of the wooded mountain and forest stretched for miles beyond. In the front ward was a wall about 3 feet high, and on top was a hill that inclined upwards back some 10 yards of grass that terminated at a fence. Beyond that was just woods and a small hiking trail. When we moved into this house, I was just starting first grade, and what I'm about to tell of has been happening regularly until we moved out when I was in middle school. My mom was also deeply spiritual and also believed in the supernatural, though I don't think they knew what she had possibly encountered. When I was sent off to school, my mom stayed back at the house to do paperwork for an ongoing custody battle. When she was alone or when I was out of sight was when it started happening. She would hear my voice shouting for her from the front yard, yet she knew that I was not home at that time, nor would I have been. The first few times it happened, she wrote it off as her hearing things, since she is hard of hearing in one ear. The longer we lived there, the more seemingly uncomfortable things we would feel or experience. I had never liked that house. I always felt like I was being watched in one way or another. Especially outside, coming from just beyond the property fence. A few times she was with some family friends out on the back porch that overlooked some sparse patches of forest and the valley. She would invite them over when I was at school still so that she can focus of relaxing. That's when she heard my voice again, calling to her from the wooded patch. This time her friends also heard it. Confused, they asked my mom, shouldn't I have been at school at that time, and why was I playing outside in the woods? I wasn't, had she told them that. At the same time, around the times that my mom supposedly heard my voice, a foul smell would linger around the property. When I would come home, or find my mom if I was off inside the house, my mom would keep asking me if I was really at school today and I didn't just skip school. I always answered honestly that I was at school. The most vivid memory that my mom had of an encounter with an unwelcomed friend on/around our property was one night in 2014, when I was in 4th grade, a magnitude 6 earthquake hit an adjacent county. Our property was very close to that county, and she was literally shaken awake. Note, the bedroom we were sleeping in had the bed right next to a glass sliding door that faced to the backyard. She tried to wake me up, but I was a heavy sleeper. Then, she smelled that foul scent again. 2 yellow eyes in our backyard caught her eyes. As she stared at this intruder in our backyard, the aftershock hit. Thankfully, we were far enough away from the epicenter that the only damage done to the property was a crack in the tiles of the backyard deck and also along the floor surrounding a pool we had. Another incident was that we used to keep chickens for eggs for a few months. We had the family handyman build an automatic closing coop so that the door would close just before sunset, to keep the chickens safe from mountain lions and other things that would eat chickens. Along with a metal fenced, not the chicken wire kind but the heavy-duty ones that are used in construction sites, coop on all sides including the top to keep out the mountain lions since a few were recently spotted north the nearby regional park. This was something that came from my own memory. At first it was just one chicken that ended up drowned at the bottom of our pool. After that we put a padlock on the gate to the coop. Then one late morning I was out hunting for frogs in the pool filter when I saw my aunt, mom, and family handyman, the same one that built the coop, look at the coop shocked and worried. The metal fencing of the coop of one safe had been completely ripped open and inside the coop was a bloodbath. I came to take a closer look at the scene when I heard the handyman say, "I'm not sure this was a mountain lion. None of the chicken are eaten or missing. Their heads are all severed, and a mountain lion would have eaten these. They don't hunt and kill for fun." We also had no neighbors or people for at least a few miles that could have played this prank on us. And the thing I remember most was not the dismembered chickens, but the smell of rotting flesh even though the chicken looked like they were just killed the night before. Looking back it felt like we were being taunted by this thing. Or at least my mom was for some reason. When we still lived at that house and even after we moved, misfortune followed us wherever we went. My mom got into a 5-year-long abusive relationship and developed breast cancer when I was in high school. She was a very healthy woman with no family history of breast cancer and it would go away and come back just when she thought she was finally done with the chemo and treatment and all that. I had at some point in my teens gotten into cryptids and specifically Native American folklore. If what I assume about her experiences are correct, I have heard that even if you evade death by the Wendigo, it will find another way to kill you. Doctors she would visit would express confusion as she was low risk in getting breast cancer, let alone having it keep coming back since they caught it early the first time. Though we had long left that house, it felt like the memories, the fear, it was always following her. In her last months alive when I was with her, she said she kept having dreams of that old house. Of my voice from beyond the woods, beckoning for her to come. Dreams about a thing that looked like a man but wasn't exactly, bearing the same yellow glowing eyes she saw outside the night of the earthquake. She felt as if these reoccurring dreams were trying to tell her something. She had hoped it was something good and not malevolent. In fact, it did have my voice after all. Last year in the fires, the house burnt down. And this year in the spring, my mom passed away. Looking back it feels like the pieces fit together for this. Everything from her diagnosis to how her cancer had behaved felt so off. It could be that she was cursed by this thing. Or maybe there was no supernatural explanation. But it still lingers in the back of my mind. I was sent to hunt a Wendigo. I failed miserably. This story was shared by you/Retsmage6, so credits to him. Alright, I'm not much of a writer, but I've been stuck for hours and I'm bored as hell, so here goes nothing. I'm part of a team that captures, but mostly kills, monsters. And when I say monsters, I mean legitimate monsters. Stuff like chupacabras, manticores, werewolves, and so on and so forth. We're not unique, not by any means. There are hundreds of teams dedicated to the same thing all over the world. And my team isn't necessarily the best one out there, but we're good, and I trust my teammates with my life, all 4 of them. We've been on dozens of missions, and I used to think that we were prepared for anything. But now, one of my teammates is dead, and the rest of us are injured and stuck in the back of an armored truck with a 3-meter-tall Wendigo screeching outside. I'm going to be stuck here for the foreseeable future, and my teammates are all unconscious, so I've got nothing but time. I guess I'll start with how I got into this business, and how it works. It'll explain how I got into this mess. I was in the military, not going to say where, and I was good. Extremely good. Incredibly gifted in terms of both physical and mental strength. Good with weapons too. I never thought it would really mean much. Where I come from, the military is conscription-based, which basically means that, if you're a man, you're mandated to drop everything and serve in the military for 2 years. If you don't go to the military, you go to jail instead. Fun. I figured I'd just serve my 2 years, finish, go to university, get a degree in mechanical engineering, and live out the rest of my life. I thought all my military accomplishments would serve for nothing but just an interesting tidbit about me. But clearly, that wasn't the case. Just a few weeks before my 2 years were up, I was pulled into a room, which I never knew existed, and I was immediately met with some of the highest-ranking officers I've seen in my life. Initially, I thought they found out about the empty shell casing I smuggled out from a live firing for a souvenir a couple months ago, and I was bracing myself for a court-martial and a trip to the detention barracks. Hey, I never said I was good at following rules. But that wasn't the case. They told me how impressed they were by my performance, and they were transferring me to a special team based in another country, one whose name I've never heard of, made up of elite soldiers from all over the world. I would go there and continue training for another 4 years, and I would actually be sent out on real military operations. And I wasn't allowed to say no, either. Initially, I was pissed. I had dreams, aspirations. Stuff I actually wanted to do. Not to mention I had just got a girlfriend, and we were still in the honeymoon phase. The idea of just dropping everything and being forced into military service, again, was maddening. That, and the whole real military operations thing. I mean, sure, I could hit 100% of the targets at the firing range, do 95 clean push-ups in a minute, and run for kilometers with a 15-kilogram bag strapped to me, but that doesn't necessarily mean I could fight terrorists or anything. I wanted to argue, make them change their mind, think I wasn't a good fit for it. Maybe even tell them about the shell casing. But before I could voice my protest, they showed me the pay. Oh my God, the pay! So much money. And they promised it would only go up. Now, where I live, the cost of living is high. Very high. Not to mention, I was a little money hungry at the time. I didn't want to become an engineer for the sense of accomplishment, if you get my meaning. So not only did I need the money, I wanted the money. I had a lot of stuff to pay for. I would have to get a house, a car, and a wedding ring for the girlfriend. Yes, I was planning on proposing. Oh, and also steroids. I take steroids. So, I went along with it. I got all my things together, hugged the parents, kissed the girlfriend, had one last drink with the boys, and went off to another country. Went to a base in the middle of nowhere, with a team made up of 20 people. Yup, the whole base for 20 people. I can still hear the Wendigo screaming. It's very distracting, just so you know. Back to the story. And then the training started. It was brutal. Way worse than anything I've ever experienced. At least in the regular military, safety is a concern, albeit not a huge one. Here, safety was unheard of. The trainers, which is all I can call them, since there were no ranks on the base, pushed us as hard as humanly possible. And sometimes, inhumanely. Once, they gave us no food for a week. Another time, they snuck into our bunk and turned off the safeties on our guns. We had live rounds loaded, by the way. We were supposed to keep our guns loaded and with us at all times. We got screamed at for hours for that one. They said if we were real soldiers we wouldn't have let that happen. Many times I wanted to punch one of them right in the face. It's a literal miracle everyone made it to the end of training with their sanities and bodies intact. Maybe the steroids had something to do with that. I had to hide my use back in my home country, but here they actively encouraged it. They even bought us needles and everything. Reason being was, according to them, if injecting yourself with a gram of testosterone every week makes you run faster, lift heavier, recover quicker, and just basically be a better soldier, then you should do it. At the end of training, we were briefed on our operations too. They told us we were going to see and do things we never would have imagined. They told us monsters were real. Initially, we all laughed, and then were punished for laughing. They made us run 5 kilometers, then continued the briefing. They told us we would be hunting monsters, but only those that were a threat to people. And we wouldn't always kill them, sometimes just capture them. Because some monsters, like minotaurs, produce certain substances that can cure disease. Meanwhile, peaceful creatures, like Sasquatch, would be left alone. All of this said with a straight face. I still thought it was all a big joke. I mean, who wouldn't, right? But then they showed us videos. I still remember them, frame for frame. Monsters eating people, tearing people apart, nightmare stuff. And not to mention the video quality. You can't fake stuff that well. They sent us on our first mission a week after. Put us on a private jet and flew us off to Japan. Said we were looking for something called Gashidakuro. Supposed to be a giant skeleton that eats people. Which I mean, how do you keep the public unaware of something like that? A skeleton as big as a tree, just walking around, straight out of Clash Royale, what? So I clash a little. Big deal. I've got to hand it to the cover-up guys, they don't get the credit they deserve. We found it eventually. 2 of them, actually. Wasn't hard to be honest. They were over 20 meters tall in the middle of a rice field. According to legend, these things were supposed to only attack lone travelers. The village they had just massacred said otherwise. They saw us, let out a bellow, and sprinted straight at us. We ran straight towards the nearby tree line, hoping the oak trees would impede the monsters. One guy wasn't so lucky. He was always the slowest during group runs. He got snatched up, and the skeleton just bit his head clean off. At least his death was instant. Thank God for that. Speaking of instant deaths, I can still hear that Wendigo shuffling around outside. Maybe I should speed up my riding a bit. We took down both of the monsters with rockets. Now, according to folklore, from hundreds of years ago, the Gashidakuro are supposed to be invincible. But they didn't have RPGs hundreds of years ago, did they? When all you've got is a spear against a skeleton 15 times your size, it's going to seem invincible. Props to people from ancient times, I don't know how they survived against these things. So that was my first encounter with the supernatural. We went on a lot more missions after that. Eventually, as we got better, we started getting split up into smaller teams. I started to actually enjoy it. I was only interested in money in the beginning, but a sense of accomplishment started coming with it. I remember the first time I really felt proud of what I did. We were in some town in Greece, with a really small population, less than 10,000. There was a manticore absolutely demolishing the place. It was tearing its way through a row of houses when we came across it. Busting through a wall while a family on the other side was screaming for help. We took it down, and went to check on the family. There was a little girl, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old, who ran up and hugged me. My heart melted a little. I'm not going to lie. I've always been fond of children. Her parents were probably scared of us, a bunch of guys with heavy weaponry and armor, but she wasn't. She just knew we saved her life, and she was thankful. I really thought about the impact of my job on that day. So, I was making bank and loving my job. Life was far from perfect, but it was good. And then one day it came. The mission that screwed up my entire life. We were sent off to Canada. There was a confirmed Wendigo presence in a forest very near a town, and people were starting to disappear. We had to take it down ASAP. Not a capture, a kill. Now, this Wendigo was particularly interesting. It used to be a human. That's pretty rare, apparently. Most Wendigos were made by a spirit in the sky or something, and the real ones are a lot stauncher than the people who become Wendigos. This specific Wendigo used to be a guy named Ned Terrell. He went off into the forest with his girlfriend, ironically, to look for a Wendigo, and they got lost in a blizzard or something. Then a few weeks later he turned up and started eating people. A bunch of doctors just figured he lost it and they locked him up. They said he had convinced himself he was a Wendigo, and that it was best for everyone that he stay locked in his room for the rest of his life. But the thing is, Mr. Terrell wasn't so crazy after all. A couple months after they locked him up, the doctors noticed something. He was growing. A lot. Now, Terrell was already a pretty big guy. About 2 meters, if I remember his profile correctly. Then one day, one of the doctors, I think his name was Bowman, realized he was a lot taller. They measured him, and he was 2.18 meters tall. A while after that, he was 2.34 meters. But even though he kept growing taller, he kept losing weight. Started at svelte 80 kilograms, he was pretty underweight after living in the forest and eating people for a couple months, and ended at 56 kilograms. And he kept getting stronger too. One day he leapt at the guards and took a chunk out of one guy's arm. Thank God for tranq darts. They hit him with enough stuff to take down an elephant. That was the day they decided they had to transfer him out to a more secure facility. They knew they were dealing with something they didn't have the ability to handle. So they threw him into a truck and transported him to a maximum security prison that was a couple hours away. At least that was the plan. Halfway there, he ate the driver, the guards, busted out and ran off. Pretty soon, reports of a giant emaciated man running through the forest and roaring his head off reached us. We sent a scout, who identified it, or I guess him, as a Wendigo, and my team was sent in. Now according to legend, humans can turn into Wendigos when they choose to resort to cannibalism instead of starving, or they can be possessed and forced to commit cannibalism by Wendigos. Which one is Terrell? Personally, I'm hoping he's the second option. At least that way, he dies with his humanity intact. The sounds outside have died down a little. Mr. Terrell must have gotten bored. I can relax a bit. We went out into the forest, the 5 of us. Body armor, assault rifles, grenades, rockets, all of it. We thought we could take him. We could not. It started off so slowly. We found its tracks and started following them. There was a blizzard going on, which is apparently something Wendigos can do. There's a blizzard going on now actually, but my team had no problems. We followed them in our armored truck for an hour or so. Then all of a sudden, it was just on top of us. Never saw where it came from. Unbelievable speed. It tore my teammate out of the driver's seat and swallowed him whole. He was a big dude too. 1.9 meters tall and built like a young Brock Lesnar. Just got swallowed up, starting from the feet. He screamed the whole time too. I'll never forget it. The Wendigo just unhinged its jaws and leapt on him. One movement, he was suddenly swallowed up to his waist. The truck crashed and the rest of us jumped out and ran for cover, I'll admit it. Even professionals get scared. We just watched our teammate get eaten. Took a while, too. He was screaming and begging, one arm pinned to his side, and the other flailing around. He had broken the #1 rule, always have your gun loaded and with you, so there was nothing he could do. It took us a few seconds, but we opened fire. The Wendigo was squatting on top of the truck, its jaws now around the guy's chest. We killed our teammate, but he was dead anyway, we just granted him mercy. We emptied our mags at that thing, and we only hit it twice. Visibility was poor due to the blizzard, and like I said, it was fast. Seriously, faster than anything I've ever seen. It stood up, and it was huge. Absolutely dwarfed us. It was thin as a rake too, ribs nearly tearing through its skin, skeletal arms, kneecaps very visible. I saw a photo of a family of Indian villagers during the Madras famine once. It looked just like them. Very human looking. Just looking at its face, you would think it was just a starving man. I saw a picture of Mr. Terrell, back when he was a regular guy. You could definitely tell it was him. It tipped the truck over and sprinted straight for us, lashed out, tearing through our armor like it was cardboard. One of us, I don't even remember who, got a grenade off. Unfortunately, not a direct impact, but still made it back off for a while at least. We jumped straight into the back of the truck and put it into lockdown mode. If you're slow and can't figure out what lockdown mode does, it locks the truck down. Metal covers sliding over the windows, a bunch of electronic locks, makes it a fortress. Unfortunately, it also prevents it from driving, because the wheels withdraw into the body. The Wendigo started slamming on the doors, but it couldn't get in. It's strong, but not that strong. So that brings us back to where we started. I sent a distress signal out a while ago, but I got no response. The blizzard may be blocking our communications. The snow's coming down really hard. It's freezing, even with the truck's heater. I'm really hungry for some reason too. I can't have been here for more than a couple hours, but I'm absolutely starving. Even the time I didn't get food for a week at base wasn't this bad. I'm ravenous. But there's no food. And I sure as hell am not going out there. I won't make it very far. My teammates are still out for the count. I don't really know what to do now. I can't hear the Wendigo, but as long as the blizzard's here, I know it's out there. There's a video feed of the outside, but I turned it off. I need to conserve energy. The last I saw the Wendigo, it was eating the snow my teammates' blood spilled on. This thing leaves no traces. It would probably lick blood off the walls if it could. It can't get in, but I can't go out. The situation seems pretty hopeless. But hey, if you're reading this, that means I made it out. I'm typing on the Notes app on my phone, so the only way for someone to see this is if I get out of here. I'm going to take a little break and think about what to do now. Goodbye. Hey guys. I found this story on a phone in the back of a wrecked truck I came across while hiking through the woods. I called the cops as soon as I saw it, but I snooped through it to find any valuables, sorry, and I found this. What do you guys think? It's probably just some BS, right? I mean, there aren't any bodies in the truck, or blood even, which, if this is real, should be the case. There was a really heavy blizzard a day ago, but that's just regular Canadian weather, right? Wendigos and monsters, they're made up. Right? Maybe some aspiring writer crashed and decided to just type a story while he waited for help, then just left his phone and walked away? That doesn't make sense. And the truck was crazy, it was more of a tank than a truck. I don't think writers would really drive stuff like that. And there were a bunch of weapons too. I didn't touch them though. I'm wearing pretty thick gloves, but I can't risk getting any of my DNA on a firearm. I'm out on probation right now. There were prints leading away from the truck at least. Only one set though. And they were huge, I mean seriously. This guy was big. Barefoot too. I hope he made it out all right. I'm walking back to my house while typing this. I still don't know what to make of it. The only way it adds up is if the story is real, but it can't be, right? I mean, I would have seen something by now. Whatever. I already told the cops and they're on the way. They'll figure it out and I'll read about it in the paper tomorrow. I'm just going to focus on getting home now. It's starting to snow pretty heavily again, and the wind's picking up. I hope it's not a blizzard. The thing in the fields. This story was shared by you/Snake973, so credits to him. When I was young, I lived on a farm in rural Oregon with my parents. I was the only child. We weren't a big commercial farm. Just a family type thing. We had 5 cows, 3 horses, a small herd of goats, 2 dogs, and 1 chicken coop. We also had some Indian runner ducks we kept mostly as pets. We didn't really make any money off the place, just enough to sustain the animals and a little extra for ourselves. Money enough to take a decent vacation every couple of years. Dad had his other job in town, an insurance agent. He was the only one around really. The town wasn't more than about 1,500 people. Mom gave horse riding lessons as well. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. It was really an easy life, or at least it could have been a lot worse. I went to school, Dad went to work, Mom took care of the animals, then we all had dinner together every night, and I would go to bed while Mom and Dad had a beer or 2 and watched the news. Sometimes at night I would hear things outside. Mostly just normal stuff. The cows or horses would get spooked by a coyote or something, or I would hear the dogs chasing a rabbit, barking their heads off. Every once in a great while we would find a chicken dead. Dad would always tell me about it but never let me see the body, although I asked frequently. He would keep Mom and I inside until he had gone out, did whatever he did with the body, throw sawdust over any blood, and then life would go on as normal. I assumed it was foxes, as I had seen a couple of them out in the pasture over the years, slinking around back and forth through the grass. The summer when I was 10 years old, I remember helping Mom change the bedding in the horse stalls, when we heard a huge racket going on outside. If you've never heard the sounds of a horse in pain, you don't want to, trust me. It sounds almost like a person screaming. Well, that's what we heard, and one of our horses, the Palomino, came running into the barn with a wound on its left thigh. For long marks, like claw marks, ran across its body for about a foot. It had blood running down its leg, and was limping. I was so scared by the sight of that much blood that Mom locked the horse in a stall and made me go inside with one of the dogs. She told me to lock the door and stay inside until she came in to get me. I did. Eventually Mom came inside and told me that the horse had hurt itself on the barbed wire that ran the perimeter of the pasture. We owned more land beyond that, but it was mostly forested. I guess I believed her at the time, but at dinner that night I noticed Dad was being particularly quiet and Mom was talking a lot more than she normally did. She was being really animated, and I noticed that Dad had gotten his rifle out and set it by the back door. Usually he only did that when the coyotes had been acting up. That night I went to bed as normal, but I had trouble falling asleep. I turned on my desk lamp and decided to read comic books until I got tired. I have a very vivid memory of reading Uncanny X-Men and hearing the back door open. Looking out, I could see my dad by the porch light, lighting a cigarette and holding his rifle under his arm. He started walking over to the driveway and then turned to follow the fence line. I couldn't sleep until I knew Dad was back safe. I kept coming downstairs with the excuse of getting water to see if Dad was back in the house yet, and each time all I saw was Mom sitting on the couch in the living room, staring at a blank TV screen and looking worried, sighing occasionally. Eventually, about 4 in the morning, I think, Dad did come back, and I was so tired and relieved that I fell asleep as soon as I knew he was home. He never told me what he did that night, but I never thought to ask. 2 months later I was back in school. It rains a lot in Oregon in the fall, and this day was no different. All I could hear from my bedroom was rain hitting the ground and the aluminum roof of the chicken coop. There was light thunder in the distance, but it was slowly getting closer. I thought I had heard a coyote yapping out around the garage, or it could have been one of the dogs. I looked out, straining my eyes to see whatever there may have been. In a brief and distant lightning flash I saw something. It looked almost like a person, but hunched over, and with a long torso. It was tall, taller than Dad, who was a good 6'4", at least. I just barely caught a glimpse of it on the near side of the garage, then the light faded and I didn't see it again that night. There was another dead chicken the next morning. The third in just as many weeks. I told Dad what I had seen the previous night. The color went out of his cheeks momentarily, until he told that the storm must have been playing tricks on me. I accepted that. 4 months after that we lost a cow. It was in the middle of the night, and we all woke up at the same time. There was a lot of noise in the pasture, but only briefly. The cry of a dying animal, and a primitive, guttural yell that I had never heard before. Dad rushed up to my room. I could hear him running up the stairs to my room. He had his rifle in hand, and opened my door. He saw I was awake and told me to stay inside no matter what and try to go back to sleep. I don't think I have to say that sleep wasn't really an option any longer, but I did stay in my room, with a blanket held tight around my shoulders and staring out the window. Probably about 10 minutes later I heard gunshots in the field. I don't know what he was shooting at, whether it was whatever had attacked the cow, or the cow itself, trying to put the animal out of its misery. Dad rarely, if ever, talked about that night. I later found out that he had gotten to the cow only to find it ripped open on the ground, bleeding out from its torso. The shots I heard were him shooting the cow in the head. It kept going like that. 4 years. A chicken or a duck here and there. Something bigger only very rarely. It sounds absurd, but I almost came to think of it as commonplace. I only ever caught glimpses of the thing until what comes next. It terrified me. It happened in the middle of the day, over the course of a long weekend when my parents had gone to Seattle to see my uncle, who was ill. It was on a Saturday afternoon. I was 17 years old. I was out in the barn putting out food for the horses and the dogs. The horses were running around out in the pasture and the dogs were asleep in the corner of one of the horse stalls. I heard something rustling in the tall grass outside in the pasture. The dogs looked around a little bit but didn't seem to mind. I assumed it was just one of the horses waiting for me to leave so they could eat. I kept going about what I was doing, and in several minutes I thought I heard breathing. I turned to look and it was standing in the door. Tall as hell, even hunched over. The sun was streaming in behind it, lighting up all the dust in the air around it like some kind of sickly halo. It was looking at me. Considering me. Maybe it was trying to decide whether or not I was food. I remember swearing, turning, and running as fast as I could for the house, not even thinking. Panic causing my legs to move. It was behind me, not even breathing hard. I heard its feet hitting the ground in a constant rhythm. I got to the house, opened the door, slammed it behind me and locked it as fast as I could. I tore through the house, locking every door, and drawing the blinds on every window. I could hear it snarling outside the back door. The dogs were barking at it, but they wouldn't try to attack the thing. It was too big and they knew it. It roared at the dogs and they ran off, probably to hide in the pasture. I went to my parents' bedroom and got Dad's rifle. I loaded it, set up a chair in the living room facing the back door, and waited. It started prowling around the house. I could hear its feet crunching on the gravel of the driveway and the wooden planks of the back deck. It kept walking, back and forth. I thought about trying to look through a window to see it, but I was too scared. Eventually, after hours of hoping it would go away, the sun went down. I turned on all of the outside lights and went up to my room. I opened my window, with the rifle in my hands, hoping to be able to pick the thing off from above. I saw it lurking just beyond the glow from the porch light. It had long, sinewy arms, and walked on bent knee. It was by the chicken coop. Then it disappeared from view. I heard the chickens squawking and screeching. The thing reappeared with a dead, bloody chicken in its hands. It bit off one of the wings with jaws that were dripping with slime and drool and let the dead bird drop to the ground at its feet. Then it looked at me. Its eyes made contact with my eyes. It turned away again, back to the chickens. It came back with another bird, mutilated it in front of me, and dropped it. It went back again. And again. I should have taken a shot at it, but I was astounded and confused trying to figure out what it was doing. Then it hit me. It was a show of power. It was showing me that it was stronger than me. That it could do whatever it wanted to do because I couldn't stop it. At the same time I felt powerless and sickened. Powerless because what it was saying was true. If it was just that thing in me, I wouldn't stand a chance. Sickened because I realized what kind of intelligence it would need to be able to convey that message. The thought shook me out of my stupor and I remembered the rifle at my side. It was heading back to the chickens, and I decided that when it came back I would take my shot. It strode back to the porch. Almost arrogant, walking on bended knee with those arms so long that the chicken was nearly dragging on the ground. I raised the rifle up to my eye, and tried to steady myself. My heart was beating so hard I could see the rifle shaking ever so slightly in rhythm with each heartbeat I could hear pounding in my own ears. It raised the body to its mouth, and just as it was about to put the chicken's head inside, I squeezed the trigger. The crack of the gun echoed in the now shattered quiet of the nighttime standoff, and I heard it howl. A painful, loud, startled howl. I had hit it on the outside of the shoulder. It ran off into the night. I never saw it again. It was still out there, though. It still killed chickens, and other things. More often than before. I'm writing all of this now because my parents died 3 weeks ago. They were killed in a collision with a drunk driver. He survived. They left me the farm, and I intend to live here with my own family. I'm 32 now, and I work for an Oregon Fish and Game office in Salem. I'm married to a wonderful woman named Stephanie. We have one son, Zachary, who is 4 years old. We are expecting a daughter in 4 months. I've come to the farmhouse alone today. I told Steph that I just wanted some time alone in my parents' house to deal with some emotions. She was very understanding. I've come back to claim what is rightfully mine. I have Dad's rifle next to me on the table and it is almost dusk. I've also brought several portable halogen lights to set up around the house, and my own shotgun. I'm borrowing a handgun from Joe, a guy at Fish and Game who I work with. When I am done typing this account of my memories, I will print it out and leave it on the dining room table, along with my wedding ring and my key to the safe deposit box where my will is kept. Everything is loaded and ready. Hopefully I will return here to collect these things, and nobody will ever know I wrote this. Steph, in the event that you are the unfortunate soul to find this, which I'm terrified to think seems a likely outcome, the thought of you having to go on alone hurts me more than anything in this world ever can. Know that I love you more than anything, and I hope you understand that I am doing this to keep you safe. Zachary, I love you and can only hope you grow up to be a good, kind-hearted, and strong man like your grandfather was. To my unborn daughter, if I don't live long enough to meet you, it will be the single greatest regret of my life. Tell the police, tell Fish and Game, call Joe, he's one of the few people who knows about this. Make this situation known. Eventually someone will kill it, even if it isn't me. Goodbye for now. If you guys want to hear more horror stories, then subscribe to Horror in Detail. My best friend the Wendigo. This story was shared by /Kessel the Viking, so credits to him. Sometimes things happen to us that we just cannot explain. No matter how many resources are available or what information we can find, there are things that can never be understood, and that is a commanding factor of life. Now, a question. I know some, if not many of you have had friends, even best friends that disappear from your life without a rhyme or reason. That very same thing happened to me with my friend Marcus. We were best friends throughout high school and carried the friendship on well into our 20s, but one day he simply disappeared. I don't mean he was reported missing and the police were involved. I just mean he left without telling me, his best friend. I spoke to his mother and she said he had gone on a trip to northern Alaska. When I asked her why, she said, he never gave me a reason. I could hear the sorrowful tone in her voice. Like myself, she missed him too. But out of nowhere he came back. He told no one he had returned, and one day he showed up on my doorstep as if he had never left. I admit he looked good, better than I remembered. He seemed healthy, if you can understand. Marcus. You're back? I remarked, bewildered. Yeah man, he said in his smooth demeanor. He had his hands tucked into the pockets of the jean jacket he was wearing, got back a couple days ago. You look well. Where you been, man? I asked casually. I noticed his face was flushed red, but it was probably just the lighting outside because the sun was setting. Yeah, thanks. I've just been traveling, finding myself. He answered, but he seemed indifferent about conversation. It made me wonder why he came here if he wasn't looking to talk. Well, that's cool. Did you want to come in? I asked while gesturing my hand through the door. He nodded and brushed past me into my home. Thanks, Derek. He said nonchalantly, as if this was a routine occurrence. Something up? I asked as I closed the door behind me. Marcus flipped his wavy blonde hair and sighed. No, not really. I just have a proposition for you. It was strange that this was how he decided to start the first conversation between us in a long time. A proposition? Forgive me for saying this, but we haven't spoken in quite some time, man, and I don't know if I'm really in the position to dive headfirst into something new. No, it's not like that, began Marcus. He didn't appear slighted by my response, which was welcoming to see. I was just wondering if you'd be interested in coming with me on a trip. A vacation of sorts. It wouldn't be long, just a week up north. With who? You? I asked with a hint of scrutiny. Yeah, just me, he said quickly. For some reason, his fingers were twitching like he could barely control himself from having a breakdown of some kind. Why so sudden? And why me? I mean, Marcus, where have you actually been this whole time? I find it strange you would come to me of all people for this hurried request of yours. I need someone to come with me. It's important that you understand, Derek. I'm not the same person I was when I left. I am something much more unique. But I cannot be left to the masses. I must be quelled. He was speaking in completely vague sentences, the context of which I couldn't understand. I have to be honest with you, Marcus. I don't know what the fuck you're saying to me right now. I wasn't going to lie, but I saw a slight shift in his eyes upon hearing my candor. He sat down in my recliner and clasped his hands together. Listen, are you in or not? He wouldn't even look me in the face when he asked. He simply hung his head with his eyes on the floor. Well, I don't know. Where would we be going exactly? A cabin up north. Once we get there, I'll give you a list of instructions that you must adhere to. I promise you will understand. I took a deep breath. Clearly, Marcus was in distress and needed help. I wasn't going to leave him to fend off against whatever demons were riding his shoulders. I figured he had become an addict and wanted someone to look after him while he got himself cleaned up. I suppose, I said quietly. Awesome. Thanks, Derek. He said hastily, you won't have to pay for anything, I've got that all covered. Just be ready tomorrow morning and we will head up there. Tomorrow? Damn, that's definitely short notice, I said, already thinking about what I would tell my boss. Don't worry about work, man. Just trust me, even if you've never trusted anyone, he remarked as if he read my mind. He then stood up and began walking to the door. I don't know what happened to you, but something's definitely different, I mentioned as I opened the door for him. You don't know the half of it, he said before walking outside. See you in the morning. Bring anything you're comfortable with bringing, but don't overpack. I nodded even though he was facing away from me, and he walked off down the sidewalk. How had he got here? Obviously he didn't drive if he was walking. Something seriously weird was going on with him. My boss was fine with me taking some time off. I figured it wouldn't actually last a week anyway, so in my head all would be well. The next morning I was ready to go and Marcus arrived just after 9 a.m. to pick me up. I brought my things outside. I had only packed some snacks, a flashlight, blankets, a pillow, my medication, and several outfits for the outdoors of life. The cabin has beds and blankets, said Marcus from the driver's seat of the old SUV he arrived in. Yeah, well, I prefer to feel a sense of comfort that I can only achieve by having things that belong to me. If you say so, he remarked. His lack of engagement was already growing stale. I got in the passenger seat and we sped away without another word shared between us. Every so often, I would glance at Marcus to study him. While he did seem healthy, there was something innately different about him that I couldn't put my finger on. He was jittery, easily startled, and on edge. We drove for a good 6 hours before pulling off at a rest area. Marcus seemed alert, but for some reason he said, "We're going to sleep here for the night." The night? Have you gone blind, dude? It's barely 3 in the afternoon. Yes, I know. I'm hungry and I need to rest, said Marcus quietly. I can drive, man, if that's the issue, I asked reassuringly. He turned to look at me with viciously bloodshot eyes as if he had been staring at the sun the entire drive. No, you don't know the way. You can tell me the way. I have GPS. No, Derek. Just close your eyes, or do something for a bit. I'm hungry. The way he said hungry was like a ravenous animal, like his desire to feed was overthrowing his decision-making. Fine, fine. Go get something to eat then, I said, kicking my feet up on the dash and leaning the seat back. Marcus stammered when he responded, "No, not yet. When night falls, I will." You're acting really strange, man. Is everything good? Instead of responding, he only nodded slowly. I didn't say anything back, but I did watch him from the corner of my eye for some time. I noticed he was watching every single person who walked into the rest stop, like a starving fiend. I passed the time by reading on my phone, listening to music through my headphones, and after night fell, I closed my eyes. Up until I decided to try and sleep, Marcus hadn't taken his eyes off the entrance of the rest stop. I can't even recall if I saw him blink once. Luckily, I managed to fall asleep relatively quickly. However, I was awoken abruptly when Marcus heaved his body back into the driver's seat as if he were running from something. He was absolutely covered in blood, his mouth and most of his face, his hands, his shirt and pants, everywhere. Marcus, what the fuck, man? I asked intensely. He swallowed audibly. I feel better now, we can keep going. I could see his teeth stained red from the dim light produced by the rest area. No way, man, you're going to tell me what happened to you. Without looking at me, he said, I had to eat, Derek. We all have to eat. What in the fuck are you talking about, Marcus? What did you eat? A barrel of blood? Not quite. He then started the vehicle and shifted it into reverse. I reached out and shifted it back into park. When I did, he turned towards me and grabbed my wrist. His grip was insurmountably strong. It felt like he could crush my arm if he had the mind to do it. Derek, let go, was all he said while his entire body was visibly trembling. I didn't know what else to do, so I listened. I carefully brought my hand back to my lap and he shifted into reverse once more before bringing us back onto the freeway. I couldn't keep my eyes off him, but he wouldn't look at me anymore. Not until we reached the cabin. The overwhelming smell of blood had filled the vehicle and I had gagged a few times from it. The pungent aroma wafting off Marcus was almost unbearable. I checked my phone. Of course there was no signal out here, and I caught a glimpse of him watching me from the other side of the SUV. Calling the police is futile, said Marcus through his blood-stained teeth. Tell me what you did back there. I shouted at him, unsure of what else to say. I did what I had to, he said while walking towards the front door of the cabin. Marcus, please, man. I can help. Just tell me what's going on. He froze as if he really was about to answer me, but instead he reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. Then, he unlocked the door and went in without saying another word. I stood outside for a long time. I didn't want to go inside and see him sitting there painted with blood, but something told me that Marcus needed help, so I went in. He was sitting on a dusty couch, in fresh clothes. He must have showered too because his skin was clear of the red tinge that had dominated it before. One thing was different, though. He had lost most of his hair. I don't mean little clumps or bald spots, I mean there were only a few strands of hair remaining. Furthermore, he had patches of raw skin on his face, and I'm sure they were on his body as well. I sat in a chair across from him and observed his seemingly deteriorating form. His eyes were fixed on the rickety floorboards beneath us, and he had his palms placed flat on his thighs. After 5 solid minutes without so much as a twitch, he finally raised his head. His eyes met mine, but his were almost black. There were dark blue veins forming a webbed pattern from the corners of his eye sockets, and his lips were dry and cracked. When he spoke, it was with a breathy and raspy tone. "I'm going to tell you a story, Derek. When I am finished, you will do something for me. You cannot say no, you must do it. I can't make promi dash. You must." Marcus suddenly shouted. He had raised himself up further, but something wasn't right. His spine was longer somehow, like it had been stretched, making him appear much taller even when sitting down. Okay, I said timidly. His shouting struck a drastically fearful chord within me. Good. He mumbled under his breath, then he began his story. As you know, I went to Alaska. It wasn't for nothing, I had actually met a girl up there on an app. He grinned slightly, but it quickly faded. When I say this, I mean it. She was perfect, well, for me at least. He stopped for a moment and I noticed he was eyeing my hands, but then he continued, "Anyway, her name was Claire and we really hit it off. It was one of those love at first sight moments. Seriously, Derek, she was everything I could have ever wanted or needed in a woman." I uttered a sound of acknowledgement, so he knew I was listening as he went on. "She was a simple person and she lived in an old town. I can't even remember the name of it now, but we made a life for ourselves there. However, she started acting strange. She would ask to have guests over constantly as if I wasn't enough. I don't say that in a jealous way. I mean, she literally wanted someone else over every single day, and she reeked of desperation. It was like her life depended on it." While he spoke, one of his fingernails fell off and landed with a quiet ticking sound on the floor. Marcus didn't seem to mind because he kept talking. Eventually, I caved. I invited one of her friends over, a local guy who worked at the town's bakery. About an hour before he arrived, Claire called me into the bedroom. She had this weird, almost evil tone in her voice, but I disregarded it. I thought that she may have been looking to get intimate before this friend of hers arrived, but that wasn't the case at all. "Are you sick, Marcus?" I asked as I watched 2 more fingernails slide off his fingers onto the floor. He didn't answer me, not directly anyway. He looked up at me and his left eye clouded over with a milky white color. Was he dying right before me? Marcus picked at one of the scaly gray patches of skin on his hand. It only made his other nails fall off, but he didn't seem to mind or notice because he went on. As I entered our bedroom, the door closed behind me. Claire was standing there with a rope and a gag. That only solidified my assumption about her need for intimacy, so I let her tie me up. But instead of getting frisky, she gagged me and left the room. I tried to get her attention, but obviously she couldn't hear me. "How long were you like that?" I asked gently. I wanted him to feel like I had genuine interest. "Longer than I expected." I heard her friend come inside and I tried to yell to get his attention, but it was no use. That's when the screams started. There were horrendous noises of agony coming from the other room, and they weren't from Claire. He sighed again faintly. During the conversation, his entire body had begun turning a pale gray color and the last bits of hair he had left fell to the floor. There was this squelching sound and another sound I can only liken to a saw cutting meat. I hated every moment being tied to that bed in our barely lit room. Where are you going with all of this, Marcus? Are you saying Claire killed her friend? She didn't just kill him, Derek. She ate him. What? I exclaimed vehemently as my stomach turned. Yeah, she ate him, and when she was full, she brought the scraps of what was left into the bedroom. She removed the gag and told me if I didn't eat, she would consume my flesh as well. Did you do it? I asked with curiosity. He looked down and then up before slowly nodding. I did. Marcus. Man. I don't know what to say. Just keep listening. He said solemnly. I had to hold my mouth open while she let the blood of her friend drip inside. She told me that if I did, then I'd never be sick again. I'd never worry about anything but eating. It made me remember all the times she had gone out for the night only to come back looking more youthful than before. I shifted in the chair and Marcus stared at my hands again for far too long. I was growing uncomfortable by his lustful gaze. The next time he spoke, his voice had diminished into something gravelly and hoarse. I did not fight her, I did what she asked. I hoped that she had just lost her mind, and when she was satisfied, I'd make my escape. But I was wrong. The flesh, that is, the consumption of it made me a new being. It gave me strength, vitality, and an iron constitution. I felt the best I had ever felt in years, but then came the hunger. Hunger? I questioned calmly, although I was reminded of when he mentioned how hungry he was at the rest area. Yes, Derek. The hunger for human flesh was insatiable. It didn't matter how much I ate, my body would feel like it had been further deprived of sustenance. I craved warm, running blood, almost like a vampire, and Claire did too. Before we knew it, we had slaughtered the entire town and nobody saw it coming. But after that, Claire, she turned into something feral, something less human and more animalistic. Like you are now? I asked with a hint of concern. Yes, she became this creature. It was grotesque and malformed. She wasn't my Claire anymore. So, I did what any loving partner would do. I put her out of her misery. You killed her? I ended her suffering. I see. That's when I came back down here. I couldn't live up there alone, but I also realized I couldn't be left alive at all. Derek, I desperately want to be with Claire again, whether there's still a place for my soul in heaven or if I'll be sentenced to an eternal hell for the things I've done. As long as Claire's there, I'll be happy. What are you saying exactly, Marcus? I want you to kill me. You, what? I admit, I chuckled a little because the notion was ridiculous. I want you to take the shotgun out of the gun safe and blow my fucking head off so I can't devour another innocent person. Marcus was being serious, I could tell by his tone, and the longer this conversation went on, the more his body changed. I finally managed to ask the question I desperately wanted to know the answer to. Did you eat someone at the rest area? I ate an entire family. He said without remorse. I didn't know what to say. What could you say? All I could do was gasp while remaining at a loss for words. I called the police from the payphone afterwards, so they should be there now. He began harshly. I chose that particular rest area because the cameras don't work. I had staked it out before even coming to you. It was all planned. But I did it for you. For me? You ate an entire family for me? No, I mean, I made it so you couldn't be connected to what happened. The police are none the wiser, and in reality, you've done nothing wrong. This is fucked up, Marcus. I know. I know. I'm sorry, Derek. I need you to honor my request now though, before it's too late. What happens if I don't? I asked out of curiosity. Marcus stood up hulkingly tall and groaned a bellowing, low, rumbling roar. You cannot deny my desire for death. End my pain, like I ended the pain for Claire. His breathing was rapid and fierce, but he managed to calm himself down. I apologize for scaring you, he said in his gruff voice. Marcus, you were my best friend once. I can't kill you. You have to. This is why I came to you, because you still are my best friend and I didn't want to ask a random stranger. They wouldn't understand, but you can understand. His face grew long and it was accompanied by many painful grunts by Marcus. I need you to do this for me. I do not want to hurt anyone else. Even now the hunger calls to me. It is taking every ounce of strength I have left to resist lashing out at you and devouring every tasty morsel of flesh covering your ripe and ravishingly delicious body. He shook his head like a madman before his eyes met mine once again. Please, Derek. I am begging you. I don't know what changed in me, but hearing my once best friend pleading for his death no longer perturbed my emotions. I stared at his rapidly transforming body for an indeterminate amount of time before getting up and walking to the gun safe. It was already unlocked. He must have done that while I waited outside. I reached in and grabbed the only gun in the case, the shotgun Marcus had mentioned. I assumed it was already loaded. If Marcus had planned this much, then surely he planned that too. I walked back to the chair and sat down, and a gnarled, black-toothed grin spread on Marcus's veiny, gray face. Thank you, Derek. I can't live with myself any longer, and this is the best option. Do not take pity on me. Do not feel guilty or ashamed. Take pride in the fact that you have expelled a ruthless creature from this world. I pumped the shotgun and aimed it at his head. My heart was pounding and my hands were sweating. Oh, one more thing, he remarked. In the glove box of the SUV are my life savings. Take it all and do with it what you will. I ask that you never tell my mother about this, or anyone else. It will be our secret. He then took one last deep breath. Okay. I'm ready. Do it. Just as I was pulling the trigger, Marcus's body twisted and contorted into a far more disturbing visage, and as the shot rang throughout the cabin, his blood and viscera splattered against the couch, the floors, the walls, and even the ceiling. His painful shrieking stopped and his body ceased all movements. It was over. I sat there with the shotgun in my lap, still aimed at Marcus's corpse for most of the day. I couldn't bring myself to get up, or do anything else but stare at my headless former best friend. Eventually, I found the will to stand. After I was on my wobbly 2 feet, I took a sheet from one of the bedrooms and draped it over Marcus. I searched the entire grounds of the cabin for a shovel because I wanted to bury him, but I couldn't find one. It was cold outside anyway, and I'm sure you wouldn't want me to die from digging his grave. I did, however, find some matches. It was the middle of winter, so I thought it would be better to just burn the cabin down. I didn't want Marcus's body to rot there on the cold couch, and as I dropped a lit match on it, the fabric immediately engulfed into a mighty blaze. I walked out of the cabin and got into the driver's seat of the SUV. And that's when I remembered Marcus had the keys. I couldn't help but laugh about the irony of it all. Marcus had left 10 grand in the glove box for me. I ended up having to hike down the driveway and up the road until someone stopped to pick me up. They drove me to the nearest town, Grand Marais, I think it was called. It was a small town, but the people were friendly. I rented a room at their local inn and have been here for 3 days just thinking about Marcus and what he went through. I thought about if I was responsible for the family he murdered and ate, but I had no idea what was going on at the time. I was only along for the ride until I had to play my part, my role in ending Marcus's painful life. If your best friend, or even friend, returns to you after having been gone and without contact for years, be careful if they ask for you to take a trip with them. And always remember, the mysteries of the world can outweigh grounded reality. Nothing is as it seems, even Marcus. Be safe, everyone. I hope none of you look down on me. This story was shared by you/Bradley Innovates, so credits to him. My Wendigo encounter. This story takes place in the backcountry of the area I grew up in. Be warned. Some of this might be too frightening for some. Reader discretion is advised. So back in 2019, I remember there being a big uproar of unknown creatures roaming the forest, like Bigfoot and skinwalkers. But this story isn't about them. This story is about probably one of the scariest things I think I've ever heard about. The Wendigo. A few months after one of my friends, Jacob, mentioned this big uproar, I went to go see him since I had been away enlisted in the United States Marines. I got back after being discharged, and one of the first things I did was go and see him. We're having a good old time, and he brought up the idea of going out to a little hangout spot his now ex-girlfriend took him to when they wanted to get away for a few hours. So I decided why not, so I grabbed my gun and we went out to this extremely secluded area and started messing around on the old dock that was there. It had been pretty much forgotten by the looks of it, poorly maintained, and some boards were almost completely rotted through. So about 30 minutes into our shenanigans, Jacob brought up the topic of the Wendigo. The name sounded a little scary even for me. Curious, I asked him about it. He said that if you went into the woods and said Wendigo 3 times, you would come across the scariest looking thing you've ever seen. Me calling his bluff, I told him to prove it. To this day, I wished I hadn't. We start walking on this little path that lead deep into the thick woods close to the Alabama state line. We walked for maybe 20-ish minutes and decided we were in a good spot. I feel it's worth knowing that it had been raining a lot over the past couple days, so the ground was completely saturated with water. I turn to Jacob and he dares me to do it. I stood there, in complete silence. The rest of the forest was almost silent as well, besides the tall pines swaying in the wind high above our heads. Reluctantly, I slowly started to say it. Wendigo. 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 Then, nothing happened. I let out a silent sigh of relief at the fact that nothing happened. One thing about mine and Jacob's friendship is we loved it when one of us proved the other wrong about something. In our friendship of 10 years, I think it was one of the first times I had proven him wrong at anything. We started to talk a little bit of shit back and forth at each other when we heard a noise in the distance. Me still having the reflexes I had from the Marines, I immediately snapped towards the direction of the noise, that were just then turning into noises. I started to move closer to the noises, and then shortly after we saw a few coyotes running across the path about 30 feet in front of us. I breathed another sigh of relief, but that relief didn't last long since I knew something was up. I didn't know what was up at first, but I just knew it was time for me and Jacob to leave. As we turned to leave the woods, all of a sudden, a tall pine tree started to groan and creak as it started to come down. Noticing this, and in a moment of pure instinct, I shoved Jacob forward as the tree came falling through the rest of the branches and landed right in between us. Jacob let out a cry of terror as the tree landed, and I hopped the tree to get to him. I could feel his heart pounding like a drum as I grabbed him by his shirt and yanked him to his feet. He was still terrified and still practically crying as I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Move, Jacob! Fucking move now. I spun him around really hard, causing him to fall to his knees. I quickly got him up and we both started to sprint down the path back in the direction we came. I didn't dare look back, and neither did Jacob. I was sprinting through the woods when a familiar sound came from behind me. Jacob! Jacob, come quick! It was the sound of Jacob's younger sister Olivia. He turned and tried to get past me. The whole time he was screaming Olivia. I stopped him and said, Jacob, look at me. It's not her. Do you hear me? It's not her. Just then another pine tree started to buckle. I saw it just in time to tackle Jacob down to the ground as both of us were nearly crushed. I screamed at Jacob once more. Go! Get out of here! Go now! As I was screaming that, I pulled my gun out of my waistband and aimed it down the trail in the direction from whence we came. Jacob made it to the opening of the trail and turned back and noticed I was still aiming my gun down the trail. Bradley, get out of there. Come on, hurry. I turned and started sprinting towards him. As I made it into the clearing a good 50 feet, I turned and me and Jacob both saw it. The thing we had ushered into showing itself. The Wendigo. It stood about 9 feet tall on its hind legs. There was practically no meat on its bones. It had really skinny legs and even skinnier arms. Its skin a pale white, almost like a vampire's. But the thing I noticed the most about it were the eyes. A vibrant blue, almost like lightsaber blue for those who have seen Star Wars. Having had enough fear, I raised my gun and fired at the Wendigo. Jacob, not sticking around to see if I had killed it, turned and ran towards the car. I turned and did the same thing as he passed me. That was my first experience with this so-called Wendigo, and I pray, almost every night, I never have to encounter something that terrifying again. I saw something terrifying while hiking in rural Appalachia. This story was shared by you/comprehensive N6058, so credits to him. For context, I am a professional wilderness explorer. Since I was young, my passion had been geared towards the wilderness. I have hiked on rough terrain in many countries. I know the wilderness like it was my own precious child. I research what specific wildlife lives in the area before I go hiking, so I know what to be prepared for. That's what makes this ordeal even more terrifying. One day, while browsing through a travel site for West Virginia, I saw a pop-up for a specific mountain trail. Again, nothing seemed out of the ordinary while researching, and it really seemed like the ideal hiking spot, leading up to a beautiful view showing a gorgeous blue lake. When researching the trail, it was mentioned that the area was very isolated, with the nearest town being 123 miles away. It seemed very enticing. Of course, it had to normal flora and fauna of the region, and it didn't seem odd. It did mention not to disturb the wildlife and to watch where you step because of many false footholds that would break away and cause you to fall down the cliffside. Overall, it's just the normal mountain trail. I spent about a month preparing for this trip. I made sure to contact everyone I knew so they would know where I was in case I went missing. I then drove there and started my hike. Once I got there, I relished at the beauty of it all. The start of the trail had a view of many peaks staring down at you, and I thought to myself how the view looked like giant gods, towering over the world. I then started on the trail. At first, everything was fine. It was your typical mountain trail. I made sure I took a break every 15 minutes or so I didn't overwork myself and have to call quits. It was around my 5th break that things started to seem off. The birds had stopped singing, and I couldn't hear the chattering of insects. I didn't even hear the wind blowing through the trees. It was as if everything had vanished. After about 5 minutes, I started on the hike again. I was a little nervous and on edge, though, because I was the loudest thing there. It felt wrong, as though I was being watched, stared down by some malevolent force, playing with me. I continued, until around break number 20. I stopped, getting out my bottle of water, as I had done multiple times before. But as I was putting the bottle to my lips, I realized something was off. I heard twigs snapping, about 10 feet behind me. I threw my water bottle down and turned around to see what I heard. I can't describe exactly what I saw. That is a bit too difficult. The creature I saw was vaguely humanoid, bipedal, with pale, paste-like skin. Its face, though, was certainly not. It had eyes that I can only describe as being too big to fit its face. Its face, though small, still surrounded the eyes, but I swear its eyes were too big. The creature's mouth was indescribable, but I think the closest I could use for you to picture it would be to say that it was somewhere in between a human and a dog mouth, with 5 layers of knife-like teeth. Its hands were freakishly large, about the size of my arm, with long skinny fingers to match. About the rest of it, I can't really describe. It was a sort of blur, almost hard to see. That's all I remember about its lower half. I stood still, staring at the thing. It hadn't noticed me yet, but it wouldn't be long before it did. It was then that I started to sneeze, and then the creature really noticed me. It turned its head around, but instead of attacking me, it spoke. "Anigie," it said, in a deep guttural voice. "I don't understand," I said, confused, startled by its speaking. It looked at me, pushed its head forward, as if to say leave. I then started to run, leaving in fear. I made sure it didn't follow, and I ran till I got to my cat. I recently tried to do research, but I haven't found anything on it. But what I do know is that it spoke in Cherokee. It told me to leave. I have researched the region and have seen that many people have come up missing there. I now think about the human-like sorrow in that creature's eyes, and I think I know why it wanted me to leave. The hunt for a Wendigo. This story was shared by you/bloody_Valkyrie, so credits to him. Ever since I found out about Wendigos, I've been obsessed with them. They're mythical creatures that are rooted in the Algonquin-based Native American folklore. They have heightened senses, they're extremely fast, unnaturally large, and strong. These are all advantages that help them stalk their prey. I'm so intrigued by them because no one knows if they actually exist. I've spent hours researching about them. I know pretty much everything about them. The Wendigo is pretty much the embodiment of gluttony, always consuming yet never satisfied. They're always at the point of starvation. I've read about so many skinwalker and Wendigo encounters, but no one actually knows if the stories are true, so neither do I. That's why Rose, Charles, and I made a group for hunting mythical creatures. We go out into the forest sometimes to look for the creatures. We haven't had any luck yet. I love to talk to my grandpa about them, and hearing his stories about them are always the best. Every time he tells me a story, at the end of it he says, "Don't go near the northern forests of the Atlantic coast and Great Lakes region of the United States and Canada." The thing about this is that I am too curious, and I live near the forest he talks about. It's 25 minutes away walking distance. I know my way around the forest because of my map, and it's so close to my house. I've been there before with my friends, but we've never been that deep into it. The doorbell rings as I get a message. I open my phone. The message says, "I'm here." I walk downstairs to the front so I can open the door. As I look through and open the door, I see Rose and Charles. "Hi," said Rose eagerly. Charles groans. Hey, are you ready yet? We just walked here to make sure that you were ready, Rose added. Yeah, come inside really quick, I have some stuff I need to grab, I insisted. Rose exclaimed, I got a new tracker this weekend. Is it actually a good one this time? Charles murmured. Rose states sarcastically, and yes, I would totally buy a broken tracker. I'm messing around with you, geez, Charles snickered. We all head out of the house and in the direction of the forest. About 30 minutes later we make it to the edge of the forest. I take a deep breath looking into the slight fog and menacing atmosphere of the viridian-tinted forest. Minutes passed until I broke my eyes free before entering the forest. This time the atmosphere was different. It was so thick, eerie, and it felt alive. I've never actually believed that I would encounter a Wendigo. We just enjoy going exploring and pretending that we'll run into it. We walked through the forest for what felt like hours. I knew it was the deepest we've ever gone in, and I had lost where we were on the map. Rose flustered with concern. Hey, we've been walking for hours. Are you sure you know where we're going or how to get back? Yeah, don't worry, Rose, I have my map and compass with me. We came into the forest from the west and were heading north toward the caves, I reassured. Everything looks the same around here, Rose scolded. I mean, they are all just trees and bushes, Charles smirked. We walk deeper into the forest as dusk falls upon us, the golden pink horizon illuminated over the forest leaves and shrubs creating beautiful shadows. We walked for a little while until we stumble upon what looks like a slaughtered animal. All we see is red, blood red. Th. The cedar trunks of the trees, the mossy green ground. The evergreen shrubs. Those colors were no longer vibrant greens, only objects doused in blood. I can't believe my eyes. There was no words, just silence. I couldn't tear my eyes from this gruesome mutilated mess of whatever it was. Could an animal really do something like this? I questioned if we were alone in these woods. Minutes pass with terror in our bones, dead silence, no animals in sight. Not a single sound carried through the forest as the sun falls behind the horizon. Until I hear a few branches breaking from in front of the bloodbath. I look ahead of the mess into the darkness only to see two bright frosty colored eyes peering into my soul from within the obsidian-shaded forest. More branches break through the forest ahead of us, approaching closer, slowly stalking us in the darkness. As I look closer at this horrendous monster's outline as it approaches, I see something hanging from its mouth. I think that it's a hunk of flesh, but I can't make it out. I fix my gaze towards its hand and I'm instantly filled with terror. I knew what this was. I see a hunk of flesh in its mouth. Its unnaturally long and bony fingers are gripping onto a human head. It was the thing I've been looking for. I can't believe it. I never thought I would actually run across one of them. That face, the abnormally large body with skin stretched across all of its bones. I knew right then and there I had to run. I had to run for my life. It was now or never. Ah! Rose squealed as she realized what was in the forest with us. I turned around as fast as I could. My friends and I started running for our lives. Shortly after, I could hear it intently chasing after us. Branches snapping behind us as we run with no direction. The Wendigo lets out an inhumanly screech. My heart is pounding as we all hide, hoping the creature doesn't find us. We're all so exhausted and out of breath, yet trying not to move or make a sound. We listen closely as we hear a cracking of twigs inching closer to our vicinity. That's when I heard the most eerie sound in my life. Not too far into the woods, I heard a soft voice of a little girl asking for help. "Help, please, someone come help me," pleaded the small girl. It can mimic voices. What is this? I mean, there can't be a little girl out here this deep in the forest all by herself, right? Without hesitation, Rose jumps out of her hiding spot and goes to try and help the small girl. "Hey! Little girl dash," Rose murmured. Within second of her speaking, I hear her vocals cut out and I heard nothing else but the horrific sounds of something I couldn't even imagine. I look out from my hiding spot to see Rose completely mangled and her blood all over the soil. I couldn't believe it. Why did she do that? She knew it was after us. I can't help but stare at my friend is just gone like that and I couldn't even help her. I'm so sorry, Rose. We should have never come here. I brought you here and I never should have done that. Hey guys, you can come out now, it's safe. The monster ran away, Rose reassured. Oh my. Rose? How could it do this to us? It stole her voice and now it's trying to lure us out. These things are sick. I heard what that thing did to her. She can't be alive. There's no way I could let it trick me like this. I look hastily at the creature from my hiding spot as I wait for my opportunity to run out of this place for good. It felt like I must have been waiting there for hours, waiting for this thing to leave because it knew we were hiding somewhere there. Through the dark, ominous forest there was stray beams of light and laughter approaching. The creature heard the laughter in branches and decided that it was done here. It went to go after whoever was over there, so that's when we took our chance to run west and get the hell out of that forest. I ran until my feet blistered. At the sight of lights I sighed in relief, then collapsed to the ground as I'm panting, choking on the fresh air, bawling my eyes out with Charles. I feel sorry for those people, but I barely made it out alive myself. Rose wasn't as lucky as we were. I collected myself after crying and shaking on the ground for what felt like ages. I got up, gave the forest my last goodbye and went on my way through the dark night, illuminated by only stars in the sky and the empty street lights. Never again have Charles or me mention this to each other or anyone again. It's buried as deep in our memories as far as they could go. This story was shared by /Turquoise Umbrella, so credits to him. This is how you kill a Wendigo. My twin sister Janessa was murdered at age 16. I witnessed it like a coward from atop a tree in the forest where it happened. I'd actually blacked out the memory for a while. I knew she was dead, but I couldn't remember how it happened. It wasn't until I tried therapy that it slowly came back to me. I was also reminded of how much my parents used to fight. Our family was planning on a camping trip the day before my sister's death. Before leaving, my parents erupted into another massive fight. Janessa and I had been looking forward to the trip, and once again our parents' awful communication skills was ruining it before it even began. We snuck out of the house and took a lift to the forest. We left our phones at home, not caring whether our parents would be worried sick. We enjoyed ourselves the first day. I set up our tent, made a fire, had s'mores, and did all that stuff one typically associated with camping. The next morning everything changed. I woke up alone in our tent. Outside I hear my sister talking to someone. Inquisitive, I opened the tent and saw someone sitting at our now out campfire who looked just like me. The figure transformed as soon as Janessa realized it wasn't me. Together we ran off, that thing rushing after us with heavy steps. I was faster than my sister and a bit more athletic. I grabbed onto a tree branch and climbed up a tree. Janessa was not so lucky. I watched it happen. I watched that thing tear my sister to pieces. I'm still haunted by her screams. I also understand now why she always appears badly mutilated in my nightmares. I stayed up in that tree overnight, my sister's corpse lying in the leaves. Her remaining eye always staring up at me. While in therapy there was a moment when I suddenly recalled the hallucination I had the morning after my sister's death. I thought I saw her corpse clawing at the tree where I hid. She wanted me to come down and join her. It caused me to panic and cry out. A couple of men who had been camping in the area heard my screams, and at last I was rescued. My parents don't argue anymore. I hardly see them at all anymore since my sister's death. We're an upper-middle-class family. Over the last couple of years, my parents have frequently gone on vacations. They don't tell me where, and I never ask. I usually just wake up and find out they've left yet again. I'm out of high school now and I have no career path yet. I've only really had one thing on my mind since I remembered what killed Janessa. Now I'm returning to the forest where she died. Now I'm going to go after the thing that killed her. I've been preparing for this, and if it is a Wendigo like I've suspected, then I'm more than ready to take my revenge. This is how I'm doing it. I took a lift again. Had the driver known what I was carrying in my bags, I doubt they would have let me in. As I sat there, the realization of what I was doing grew heavily on me. What the hell am I doing? I've been talking myself up for the last couple of years. As much as I want a glorious victory, the closer I've come to this day, the more I daydream about dying the same way Janessa did. As angry as I am with my parents, I don't think they deserve to lose their only remaining child. But I just can't move on knowing that thing is still out there. My legs were as dense as gold once I tried to exit the cab. The driver watched awkwardly as I struggled to pull myself out while putting on my backpack and working to carry the other supplies. Why was I doing this alone? I don't want anyone else getting hurt in this, I think was my reasoning. But God, I wish I wasn't out here doing this alone. With each step I took into the forest, the more the terror numbed. I was in the domain of the Wendigo now. I wasn't entirely sure how much of the information about them was real. I knew they could change their appearance. I know that their true form is just like the drawings people have made. There's no way to be an expert on these things unless you've actually dealt with one. I'm still not sure why it decided not to come after me. Based on its size, I doubt it would have had any difficulty. Instead, I'm still alive and crazy enough to come back and pick a fight. As I set up camp, I found myself jumping at the sound of any bird call or movement from a nearby animal. The way I hammered in my tent, I knew I was calling attention to myself. In my left pants pocket was a gun. Like werewolves, I'd heard that silver bullets were necessary to kill Wendigos. What if I'm wrong? The thought had been with me ever since I'd stepped foot back into these woods. I stopped frequently while setting up. Behind a nearby tree, I was almost certain I could see someone watching me and then hiding behind it again. I didn't bother to walk over and check it out. I finished up my tent and made up my sleeping bag inside. As I did this, I heard calls that sounded almost human off in the distance. It probably knew I was here. The minutes went by slowly, but soon dusk set upon the forest. I built a fire like the one Janessa and I had made. I roasted 2 marshmallows. Despite her absence, I made a s'more for her as well, resting it on a sizable rock near the fire. As I ate it, I thought about our last night together. All things considered, it was pleasant. Being twins, we had moments where we'd gotten into arguments like our parents. We'd fought one another. We had our problems. But that night had been pleasant. I'd actually been glad we'd decided to camp without our parents. As frightened as I still was, I felt a warmth not from the fire. A sense of calm overcame me as my memories were suddenly flooded with the good times Janessa and I had. The good times were not for long. I could hear footsteps not far behind me. Jeremy. I could never forget that voice. It sounded just like Janessa, but I knew it wasn't her. For some reason, I felt compelled to sit there calmly. As it approached, I could tell it was going over to take a seat at the rock where I'd left the s'more. I glanced delicately to my right. I watched as a figure that looked almost identical to the Janessa I remembered pick up the s'more and take a bite. "That's not yours." I surprised myself blurting that out. The fake Janessa ignored me, continuing to scarf it down. My terror turned to anger. The thing responsible for my sister's death was standing right next to me, mocking my grief. I didn't wait for it to finish. I pulled out my gun and pointed it directly at the figure. Before I could fire, the creature jumped to the left and turned around. I was struck with paralysis when I saw the mutilated face of my sister's corpse staring back at me. "I'm trapped, Jeremy." I struggled to keep aim. How dare that thing pretend to be her? It won't let me go. And it won't let you go either. We can be together again. It's so much nicer than going home to an empty house and unloving parents. She held her hand out to me. "Trust me, brother. Please." My trigger finger felt as though struck with a serious case of arthritis. Janessa took a step towards me. "Wait, no. It's not Janessa. Why did I suddenly forget that? Feed the forest with me, Jeremy. It's so much better being dead. PPR, prove it." At last I pulled the trigger. The creature hollered in pain as it fell to the ground. I'd hit a lung, which wouldn't be enough. I aimed the gun at its heart, but failed to pull the trigger as it rolled over and jumped back to its feet. Within seconds it transformed from a corpse of my sister to its massive dark skeletal form with massive antlers. My mind was caught between fight and flight. I stood there aiming my gun but desperately wanted to flee. As it rushed towards me, I chose the later option. I rushed over to the bag I'd left near the tent. Inside was a weapon I had built myself. As I rushed over, I could tell I wasn't going to be able to outrun it. I fired another shot. The bullet lodged itself inside the neck of the beast. It cried out once more, buying me a bit of time to get to the bag. Why did I have it zipped up? As I tried to open it, the Wendigo rushed towards me again. Just like on the day of Janessa's death, I ran from the campsite, further into the forest. History was repeating itself. I was going to fail to avenge my sister. My parents were going to lose their last remaining child, all because I couldn't let this go. After at least several minutes, I'd somehow managed to keep outrunning it. I refused to slow down and look behind my shoulder. As I kept running, I noticed that I'd gone in some sort of circle. Up ahead of me was the campsite. I had a chance to grab the bag and pulled out the weapon. The closer I came to the campsite, the louder the Wendigo's footsteps became. I could almost feel the wind as the creature tried to claw at me. Once I reached the campsite, I put my hand out, clutching the bag. It felt like almost too great a risk to put my gun back in my pocket, but I needed free to pull out the weapon. I managed to do just that and used my left hand to pull out a long metal spike. I built it in such a way as to have the spike shoot out at the push of a button. The Wendigo wasn't going to slow down until it had me. I had no choice. I had to turn around. I had to have perfect timing. I had to collect my debt from the creature that took my twin sister. "Chew on this, you son of a bitch." I turned around, pressing the button that shot the spike out. Less than a foot from my face was the Wendigo, its cry so loud my ears hurt and began to ring. I'd done it. The spike had pierced the heart. Silver. Weakly the Wendigo tried to swipe at me, but somehow lacked the strength. The next part was a gamble. I pulled out my gun and shot it in the head. It wasn't going to be enough to end the Wendigo, assuming what I'd read up was correct. I rushed back over to where I'd dropped my bag. Inside was a silver axe I'd also designed myself. When I returned, the creature was still conscious, letting out continuous agonizing cries. I felt no sympathy. I hacked away at its wrists first. Its claws were the biggest threat, and I wanted them gone. Despite the weightlifting I'd been doing, it took over a dozen hacks to remove the first long-fingered hand. I pulled out my gun and shot it again in the head. It subdued the creature long enough for me to remove the second hand, and then I began on its head. As it began waking up again, I found myself screaming at the creature. I demanded it stay dead, calling it every insulting name that came to mind. Once I'd hacked most of the way through its head, I pulled it off. I kicked it a couple of feet away. The Wendigo no longer moved. It took over an hour, but I'd managed to put each limb, the head, and torso in the trash bags I'd brought along. One by one I carried them back to the campsite. I lit another fire, burning each bag. It took until dawn for me to burn the body. I left the torso for last. It was a struggle, but I managed to remove the heart, rip it to pieces, and placed it in a silver box. After locking it, I looked around the site and decided to leave everything except my gun and the box behind. I was never particularly religious, but in the months leading up to my fight I'd gotten to know a priest at a church in my area called Street Alphonsus. Luckily for me, he was there when I arrived with the silver box. His face went several shades paler when I showed it to him. Nevertheless, he escorted me to the back of the church with a pair of shovels and helped me bury it. Once done, I sat there, suddenly flooded with overwhelming emotions. I did it. The Wendigo had been slain. I'd done it. My sister's killer was dead, its body was burned, its heart in pieces and buried. Janessa. I cried out. I kept my promise. I killed it. The Wendigo can't get anyone else. It won't kill anyone else. I placed my lowered head in my hands and continued to cry. I'm sorry I wasn't braver before, I whimpered. I'm so sorry I wasn't stronger before. I placed some flowers on my sister's grave an hour later. I talked to her tombstone as though she was there listening. I'd like to believe she was, and that she was pleased with my accomplishment. Afterwards I returned home and slept through the day and all night. Once morning came, I heard some noise downstairs. I went down to see that my parents were home and sitting down to breakfast. They stopped and looked over at me, saying nothing. I walked over and pulled up a seat. I had no appetite at all. How was your trip? Where did you guys go? My parents exchanged looks before my father replied. We went out west to visit your aunt and uncle. Did you enjoy it? I had difficulty keeping my chin from quivering as I lowered my head again. Jeremy, sweetie, what's wrong? Both my mother and my father got up and came over to me. Why do you keep leaving me alone? God damn it, I'm the only kid you have left. Don't you care about me? They hugged me tightly, offering apologies. I could have sworn I felt another pair of hands on my shoulders. Their light touch was the most comforting of all. I really hope Janessa is proud of me. The night I met the Wendigo. This story was shared by you/Red Sky, so credits to him. At 10 feet tall, it towered above me. Emaciated arms grazed against the frozen ground with claws made of ice. Blood dripped from ragged, withered antlers. It looked at me with bloodshot eyes and gave me an all-too-human smile despite its long, needle-like teeth. As it leaned closer, I smelled the wicked stench of death on its breath. It drew back its head and let out a gut-wrenching howl that turned my blood to ice. Even so, I remained unfazed. Hypothermia had dulled my senses as the temperatures dropped. I had come here to die, and one way or another, it was going to happen. I was in too deep, and there wasn't much else to lose anymore. The thing happened to sense my acceptance of the inevitable, and sat next to me. Surprised, I met its glance. "Aren't you going to kill me?" It looked down upon me, and something in its expression changed. For a split second, it looked wise. Almost human. The sky grayed as it began to speak. "No." Its voice was low and rasping. "Your suffering now feeds me more than if you were dead." I stared off into the darkness. The thing next to me took out a glass jar. It was roughly the size of my head, but was dwarfed in the being's hands. As it opened it, its claws scraped against the glass like nails on a chalkboard. It looked down at me. "Your anger warms you now, but all fires burn out. You won't have much longer." It wasn't wrong. There was no way I should be alive right now. With a swift motion it struck my face with its claw, and sliced open my cheek. But no blood came. Instead, a milky, iridescent fluid leaked out of the wound. It billowed and swirled around my head. Memories. Beautiful, wonderful memories. I saw my sister, tall and lanky with wavy blonde hair spinning in her favorite skirt. I could almost hear her laugh. Dancing to the radio at midnight when she thought no one could hear. Squealing with delight as we sped down the highway with the windows down. I smiled. But soon the memories turned sour. I then saw her body, limp and broken after I took that turn too fast. The car was crumpled into a tree, and I could only watch, helpless as my life burned to the ground in front of me. I felt the heat rise up in my chest, but the creature collected the haze around me in a jar and shut it. I snapped back to a cold, gray reality. I felt numb. I couldn't feel anything. I didn't know anything. Who I was, where I was, or what was sitting in front of me with a terrible smile on its face. But at that point, I couldn't even care. "She forgives you," it said as it lumbered off into the night. I didn't know who he was talking about, but the snow around me had formed a warm blanket, the stars began to fade away, and I knew then that it was time for me to go. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comment section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.